I mean, think about it. You've studied for, what, 5 years?
Oh, at least, yeah.
Right. You have this vocabulary of thousands of words. You can sit down with a cup of coffee and read a relatively complex novel in your target language.
You understand the subjunctive.
Exactly. You've mastered the conjugations. You have stacks of filled-out notebooks to prove it. And yet you walk up to a barista and they look at you and simply ask, how's your day going? And your brain just completely flatlines.
It just shuts down.
You just freeze. The silence stretches out. You manage this awkward smile, mumble a single robotic word, and walk away feeling entirely defeated.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Why does knowing a language intimately on paper seem to have nothing to do with actually speaking it in the real world?
It is the single most universal point of despair for language learners, period.
It really is.
It's that moment of profound cognitive dissonance where, your intellect knows the answer, but your physical reality just refuses to produce it. We see adults who are incredibly articulate, highly educated professionals in their native tongue suddenly reduced to absolute panic over a 3-word greeting.
And that agonizing paralysis is exactly what we are dismantling today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We are exploring the mechanics of natural conversation today, and we're drawing from this highly specialized training curriculum called Conversation Reflex.
Specifically part 1, which is fascinating.
Yeah, part 1, which tackles this exact phenomenon. And our mission today is to give you, the listener, a practical analytical blueprint to cross that terrifying chasm. We want to take you from someone who simply possesses knowledge of a language to someone who can actually deploy it fluidly when a real human being is standing right in front of you.
What makes this framework so compelling to me is how it fundamentally re-diagnoses the problem.
How so?
Well, for decades, the traditional educational model has told you that if you freeze up, you simply need to study more.
Right, like go back to the books.
Exactly. You need more vocabulary, more grammar drills, more flashcards. But this curriculum argues something radically different. It says your conversational freeze is not a failure of memory. It is a failure of reaction.
A failure of reaction.
Right.
Right. And that distinction changes everything. I think about it like, it's like learning to ride a bicycle entirely from an engineering textbook.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
You can study the physics of it for years, right?
Yeah.
You can memorize the exact gear ratios, the theory of gyroscopic forces.
You can calculate the precise angle you need to distribute your body weight to maintain balance through a curve.
Exactly. You know every conceivable fact about the bicycle. But the exact second you sit on the seat and push the pedal, you fall over.
Instantly.
Because reading about gyroscopic forces doesn't train your inner ear. It doesn't train your muscle memory. It is the jarring difference between static academic knowledge and kinetic reality.
That is a brilliant analogy because it highlights the biological reality of what is actually happening in your brain during that interaction.
Walk me through that. What is happening in the brain?
So when you are sitting in a quiet room filling out a grammar workbook, you are using your prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
That is the part of your brain responsible for complex, deliberate, conscious thought. It's methodical. It's slow.
It's the part that loves rules.
It loves rules and it loves perfection. But live conversation does not happen in the prefrontal cortex. Live conversation is governed by the basal ganglia.
Which is the habit center, right? Like the reflex center.
Exactly. It's the part of the brain that handles procedural memory. Things you do automatically without thinking, like walking, chewing, or, catching a ball thrown at your face.
Right. You don't calculate the trajectory of the ball. You just put your hand up.
Precisely. When that barista asks you a question, the interaction moves at a speed that demands the basal ganglia take over. But because you've only ever trained the prefrontal cortex with those flashcards.
Oh, wow. I see where this is going.
The habit center has nothing to draw from. It defaults back to the slow, deliberate part of your brain, and that is where you get trapped. This curriculum calls it the translation trap.
The translation trap. Let's really dig into that because I know that feeling intimately. It happens in that terrible, heavy silence right after the other person finishes speaking. That gap.
And a lot is happening in that gap. The framework breaks down the mental cascade that occurs in those agonizing seconds.
What's step 1?
First, the other person speaks. You hear their words, and instead of just absorbing the meaning, you spend a crucial second translating those foreign words back into your native language in your head.
Right, so you're already behind.
You are. Then, step 2, you formulate your response in your native language.
Like figuring out what you actually want to say.
Yes. Next, you begin the arduous process of translating your response back into the target language.
Oh man, the mental gymnastics.
You are actively searching your mental filing cabinets for the exact right word, checking the verb tense.
Making sure the gender agreement is correct?
Yeah. Exactly. Trying to construct this pristine, grammatically flawless sentence.
And while you were doing all of this heavy cognitive lifting,
The moment simply passes.
yeah, the barista looks away to the espresso machine. The person at the party awkwardly takes a sip of their drink
Yeah.
and, looks for someone else to talk to.
In the time it takes to build the perfect sentence, the conversation moves on and you stay quiet.
This is where we run into a major psychological barrier for adult learners, isn't it? Perfectionism.
Oh, absolutely. In an academic setting, perfectionism gets you an A on the test. In the context of a live conversation, perfectionism is the absolute enemy of fluency.
The enemy.
When we are adults learning a new language, we are terrified of sounding foolish. We have these deeply established ego. We are used to sounding smart and competent in our native tongues.
We want to present ourselves as intelligent adults.
Right. So when faced with the prospect of making a grammatical mistake or using a clunky word, our ego just hits the brakes. We choose the safety of silence over the vulnerability of an imperfect sentence.
Okay, but let me push back here on behalf of everyone who has invested serious time and, frankly, money into learning the mechanics of a language.
Sure.
If perfectionism is the enemy,
Yeah.
and we are just supposed to rely on this automatic reflex, does this mean we've been studying completely wrong? Have we wasted years focusing on grammar trees and verb conjugations? I mean, am I sacrificing my actual intelligence and command of the language just to sound fast?
That is the most common and completely valid fear, and the answer is absolutely not. You haven't wasted your time.
Okay, that's a relief.
The foundational knowledge, the vocabulary, the grammar, the syntax, that is your raw material. You need that. But think of that passive knowledge like a vast fortune of gold locked inside a massive bank vault.
Okay, I like this. So the vault is my brain.
You are incredibly wealthy in linguistic terms. You have the words. But the prefrontal cortex is the combination dial on the front of that vault.
Right.
Turning it takes time. You have to spin it left, then right, lining up the numbers perfectly. In a real-time conversation, you just don't have time to spin the dial.
The person walks away while you're spinning it.
Exactly. Without training the reflex, all that wealth stays locked inside. The reflex is the master key that bypasses the dial and swings the vault open in a split second. You aren't sacrificing your intelligence.
You are building the neurological pathway to access your intelligence at the speed of life.
Beautifully put, yes.
I love that. You have to build the pathway. So if fluency is essentially a physical reflex of the brain, how do we begin to train it? Because this brings us to the first major strategy in the curriculum, which involves mastering the instant reaction.
Yes.
And what really struck me is that it relies on using surprisingly, almost shockingly simple language.
The primary directive here is blunt. Respond immediately. No translating. The guiding principle is simple is fine, short is fine, real is fine.
Simple is fine, short is fine, real is fine.
Right. It is about completely embracing imperfection in favor of speed and human connection. We need to shift the priority from structural accuracy to conversational momentum.
Let's look at how this actually plays out in reality, because the examples provided in the source are incredibly mundane, everyday interactions.
They are very basic.
But if we actually look closely at them, we can see exactly why these simple phrases sound native, while the complex textbook answers sound like a robot reading a manual. I want us to group these into some broader themes, starting with what I'll call the art of downplaying.
This is a crucial social function in modern communication, especially in English.
Right. So someone asks you, how's it going? Or what are you doing? The textbook teaches you to be literal and complete. I am doing very well today.
Or, I am currently typing an email to my manager regarding the quarterly report.
Exactly. But the curriculum suggests something totally different. For how's it going? It's just pretty good. Just keeping busy. And for what are you doing? It offers just working on something. Nothing too exciting.
Let's analyze the social psychology behind pretty good, just keeping busy, and nothing too exciting.
Yeah, why do these sound so grounded and authentic?
It comes down to social calibration. When an adult asks another adult, how's it going? In passing, they are not asking for a deeply philosophical assessment of your life.
No, they definitely aren't.
They are performing a social check-in. If you answer, I'm doing very well, it sounds absolute. It lacks the nuance of daily life. It puts a wall up.
It sounds like you were testifying in court.
Exactly. Pretty good softens that absolute. It's realistic. And adding just keeping busy is a universally understood state of modern existence.
We're all just keeping busy.
Right. It doesn't require the other person to follow up with a probing question, but it signals that you are an active participant in the world. It's a shared reality.
And what about nothing too exciting? Why is that better than actually explaining what you are doing? Like, if I am working on a report, why not say so?
Because nothing too exciting is a masterful way to downplay an activity to serve a specific social function. It tells the other person, I am engaged in a task, but I am prioritizing our interaction over my task.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
It is an implicit invitation. It signals that whatever you are doing is not so critical that you can't be interrupted for a chat. It is deeply polite, but in a casual, unstructured way that a textbook could never teach you. It lowers the stakes of the interaction.
Which perfectly leads into the next theme I noticed, which is strategic vulnerability. And this one, this was a real paradigm shift for me.
It's a big one.
Because beginners are taught to always give positive, definitive answers. The prompt is, did you sleep well? The absolute standard day one classroom answer is, yes, I slept very well.
Very robotic.
Right. But this curriculum recommends reacting with, yeah, not bad, a little tired, but okay.
This touches on something profound about how humans actually bond with one another. What is the emotional difference between those two answers?
Well, the first one shuts the door. Yes, I slept very well. Boom. Topic closed. What is the other person supposed to say to that? Congratulations on your REM cycle.
Exactly. There's no follow-up.
But the second one, a little tired, but okay. It gives the other person a hook. It gives them something to empathize with.
Precisely. It builds instant rapport through minor shared adversity. If you say you are perfectly fine, there is nowhere for the conversation to naturally flow.
Right.
If you admit to being a little tired, the other person can relate. They can say, me too, this week has been brutal, or I know I need another coffee. You've just created a genuine connection out of thin air using extremely basic elementary vocabulary.
You've permitted them to drop their own guard.
Yes, that is fluency. Fluency isn't just knowing words, it's knowing how to navigate the emotional undercurrent of an interaction.
It's so fascinating how dropping the armor actually makes you sound more proficient.
It really does.
Another theme that stood out is using idioms of time and intention to avoid what I call grammar traps.
Oh, the grammar traps are everywhere.
Right. Here's a scenario. Someone asks, have you eaten yet? The reality is that you haven't eaten, but you are planning to eat very soon. If you try to translate that literal reality, you get stuck in a horrible mental loop trying to formulate the future continuous tense or whatever it is. I have not consumed food yet, but in the near future I am preparing to, and you just freeze.
It's way too much cognitive load for a split-second reaction.
Right. But the curriculum offers this brilliant four-word phrase. I was just about to.
That phrase is a linguistic golden ticket. Think about the mechanical complexity it bypasses. I was just about to is a pre-packaged idiom. You don't need to conjugate it on the fly.
You just deploy it.
Exactly. You learn it as a single unit of meaning. It perfectly communicates your intention without requiring you to assemble the grammar from scratch.
Similarly, when someone asks, ready to go, instead of the incredibly formal, please wait a moment, the suggested reaction is almost, give me 1 second.
The casual realism of 1 second is crucial here. In this context, 1 second is not a literal unit of time. It is a social cue.
Right. Nobody expects you to be ready in literally 1 second.
Exactly. Please wait a moment. Feels like you are being put on hold by an automated customer service hotline. It creates distance.
It's cold.
Very cold. Give me 1 second. Feels like you are talking to a friend who is rummaging around looking for their keys. It instantly lowers the formality, increases the warmth, and perfectly manages the other person's expectations.
I have a personal example that aligns with this perfectly.
Oh, let's hear it.
I remember being at a dinner party in Paris years ago, trying to practice my French. Someone asked me what I did for a living. At the time, I was managing a complex digital supply chain logistics project.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. I tried to translate that precise job description directly into French. Halfway through the sentence, I realized I didn't know the word for supply chain. I panicked, mumbled something about computers, and the conversation just died. An agonizing death.
A classic vocabulary corner. You painted yourself right into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why this next piece of advice from the framework is so liberating. The strategy of strategic vagueness. When asked about work, instead of diving into technical jargon, the curriculum suggests, I work in an office. I handle a few different things.
It is brilliant advice for learners. We feel this immense pressure to be entirely accurate and comprehensive, driven by that adult ego we discussed earlier.
We want to sound important.
We do, but explaining highly specific technical jargon to a stranger at a party is tedious even in your native language.
True. They probably don't actually care about supply chain logistics.
Right. I handle a few different things is perfectly natural. It satisfies the initial question while subtly signaling that you'd rather talk about something else, or it invites them to ask a more specific follow-up if they are truly interested.
Oh, what kind of things?
Exactly. It keeps the wheels moving without forcing you to access highly specialized vocabulary under pressure.
I look at all these short, realistic phrases, and they remind me of conversational shock absorbers.
Shock absorbers, I like that.
Yeah, they aren't meant to be profound. You aren't going to win a Nobel Prize in literature for saying just keeping busy, but they aren't supposed to be poetic. They are meant to take the bumpiness out of the interaction. They absorb the impact of the question, keep the ride smooth, keep the wheels on the road, and maintain the connection.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. But even with the best shock absorbers installed, you still have a fundamental problem of physics to deal with, and that is speed.
The reaction window.
Yes, because in reality, having the right phrase memorized is only step one. The curriculum identifies the next massive hurdle, the reaction window. In a real native speed conversation, you don't get 2 leisurely seconds to consciously choose which shock absorber to deploy.
No, you get half a second, maybe less.
Exactly.
The silence becomes physically uncomfortable after about 1 second. So how do we shrink the gap? How do we accelerate the deployment of these phrases?
This is where we shift from what to say into the psychology and neurology of how to say it. And the framework delivers what I consider its most counterintuitive yet profoundly effective piece of advice.
Which is?
You must speak before you feel ready.
Okay, just saying that out loud causes my stomach to drop. Speak before you feel ready.
It's terrifying.
That goes against every instinct of self-preservation an adult has.
It causes immense psychological friction, and the curriculum acknowledges this explicitly. It tells the learner, you might feel nervous. That's a good sign.
How is feeling nervous a good sign?
We have to dive into the neurology of this for a moment. When you force yourself to open your mouth and make a sound before your prefrontal cortex has formulated the complete sentence, your amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, fires off a warning.
Because you're jumping without a parachute.
Precisely. It perceives the lack of preparation as a danger, a threat to your social standing. That is the nervousness you feel, the physical sensation of panic.
So why on earth is that a good sign?
Because that specific spike of anxiety in this specific context of language learning is the literal physical sensation of neuroplasticity occurring in real time.
Wait, really?
Yes. It is the feeling of your brain rewiring its communication pathways. You are actively denying the slow perfectionist pathway and forcing the fast reflexive pathway to take the load.
Wow.
That adjustment, that slight panic, is the exact feeling of progress. You are breaking the old habit of waiting for perfection and forging a new habit of reacting with speed. If you wait until you feel comfortable, you are waiting too long.
But let me play devil's advocate here, because the fear is very real.
Of course.
Isn't it terrifying to launch into a sentence when your brain hasn't formulated the ending? What if you just crash and burn? What if you open your mouth, say the first word, and then there's just, static?
The dreaded blank stare.
Yeah. Want native speakers think I'm unintelligent or just wildly stalling for time?
It is a valid fear, but this is where the curriculum introduces a mechanical technique to mitigate that risk and bridge the gap. We can call it the half-second buy.
The half-second buy.
Yes. It involves the strategic, intentional use of starter words or filler words to buy your brain milliseconds of processing time without losing the conversational momentum.
Give me an example of how that works mechanically.
Let's look at a rapid reaction drill from the text. The prompt is a simple question. Are you busy right now?
Okay.
The trained response doesn't start with the core information. It starts with a buffer.
A little bit, yeah. Getting just those first few syllables out a little instantly opens the door. It claims the conversational space.
It's like putting your foot in the door.
Exactly. It signals to the other person, I have heard you, I understand you, and I'm currently beginning my response. It prevents them from repeating the question or assuming you didn't understand.
That makes sense.
And here is the neurological magic of it. While your mouth is physically saying a little bit, your brain has bought itself roughly half a second to cue up the rest of the thought. And according to the text, Once you start moving the air through your vocal cords, the rest will follow. They always do. Momentum breeds momentum. It completely removes the pressure of the blank canvas. You don't have to know the whole sentence before you start painting.
Exactly.
Uttering, sure, why not? Or not really. Or even just starting with a drawn-out, yeah, acts as a pressure release valve.
Yeah.
It's like stepping out onto a tightrope, but knowing you have a safety net of these pre-learned starter syllables, you just have to take that initial leap of faith off the platform.
And consider how it changes the acoustic reality of the conversation. If someone asks you a question and you stand there in absolute dead silence for a full second and a half while you translate, it feels deeply awkward. The tension skyrockets.
It really does. You can feel the air leave the room.
But if you respond immediately with, yay, and drag that word out for a second and a half while you think, it feels completely native.
Yeah.
Think about how often native speakers use, well, and so.
All the time.
Right. It transforms a moment of internal panic into a moment of natural, thoughtful pacing. You are hiding your cognitive load in plain sight.
That is incredibly empowering. Yeah. Okay, so let's say we successfully executed this.
We're on the tightrope.
Right. We bravely started the sentence before we were ready. We used our half-second buy. We threw out our perfectly calibrated, slightly vulnerable shock absorber phrase. We gave a quick, imperfect response.
Right.
We survived the initial impact. But what happens next? Because if you just give a short answer, the conversation can immediately die. We've all been trapped in that scenario. How was your weekend? Good. And then crickets. The awful void.
Yes, the conversational dead end. This is where the curriculum transitions from merely surviving the initial question to actually mastering the ongoing mechanics of small talk.
And doing this requires a complete philosophical reevaluation of what small talk actually is, right?
Absolutely.
I'm so glad we're talking about this because I feel like society generally dismisses small talk.
Yeah.
We view it as annoying, shallow, or just waste of time before we get to the quote-unquote real conversation.
A lot of people hate it.
Right. But this framework explicitly states, small talk is not small. It is the critical foundation of how every real connection begins. It treats small talk not as a nuisance, but as the absolute engine of human interaction.
It is the engine. It is the ritual grooming of the human species.
Wow, ritual grooming.
Think about it. We don't engage in small talk to exchange highly critical data. We engage in it to establish safety, trust, and mutual presence.
We're just proving to each other that we're normal, safe humans.
Exactly. And to keep that engine running smoothly, the source breaks down a very specific mechanical conversational loop. Let's call it the anatomy of the loop.
How does the loop work?
The rule is strictly defined and beautifully simple. Give a short, honest answer and immediately throw it back with a question.
Short answer plus a question. And the rule of thumb, provided that I absolutely loved, this is a lifesaver for language learners, they explicitly say that small talk answers should never be more than 2 sentences. In fact, 1 sentence is perfect.
Think about the immense relief that provides. When you are learning a language, you often feel this pressure that to prove your fluency, you need to deliver a beautifully constructed 5-minute monologue about your weekend.
Right, you want to show off all your vocabulary.
In reality, a monologue is exactly what you shouldn't do in small talk. It violates the social contract. 1 sentence is perfect. It keeps the rhythm brisk. Let's look at the loop in action.
Okay, here is a scenario from the text. The prompt is, busy today. The trained listener responds, using the tools we just discussed. Yeah, a little. Just one of those days. That's the short, honest answer.
Perfect.
And then they immediately add the loop. You too.
Let's analyze the heavy lifting those syllables are doing. You too. It is just 2 words, but it acts as a conversational revolving door. It takes the spotlight, it takes the pressure to perform linguistically, and it immediately, politely hands it back to the other person.
It's elegant. It's so simple, but it works perfectly. Here's another one from the text. How's everything going? The model answer is pretty good, actually. Just keeping busy. How about you?
Notice the personality injected by that single word, actually, in that phrase.
Pretty good, actually.
Right. It implies a slight, pleasant surprise. It suggests, despite the chaos of the world, I am doing well. It adds a layer of emotional texture and depth to the response without requiring a complex grammatical structure. And then, the loop. How about you? The door revolves again.
It makes me realize that a conversation is quite literally just a game of catch. The loop is simply the mechanical act of tossing the ball back, so the other person isn't left standing there empty-handed.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
If someone throws you the ball and you just catch it and hold it, the game ends. It doesn't matter if you caught it with spectacular textbook perfect form. If you don't throw it back, the interaction dies.
That is the fundamental rhythm of human interaction.
Yeah.
And what this section of the curriculum is doing is not teaching you vocabulary. It is teaching you the muscle memory of the throw. Answer loop, answer loop.
Answer loop.
It drills the sequence until it bypasses the prefrontal cortex and becomes a basal ganglia reflex. You don't think about throwing the ball back. Your arm just does it.
Which perfectly sets up the final, and to my mind, the most powerful conceptual shift in this entire framework.
Let's get into it.
We've spent all this time discussing how to answer, how to react, how to shrink the silence, and how to loop. But the ultimate secret weapon to sounding highly fluent, according to this analysis, actually requires you to talk significantly less.
This is the turning point of the entire strategy. It is a profound revelation about human behavior and ego.
I was blown away by this part.
The framework asserts that if you look at the best conversationalists in the world, the people who everyone unanimously agrees are charming, engaging, and fluent, they aren't the ones with the biggest, most esoteric vocabularies.
Right.
They aren't the ones dominating the airwaves and talking the most. They're the ones who listen the best and who demonstrate that listening by asking the right questions.
This was a massive aha moment for me. It entirely shifts the conversational burden off the shoulders of the language learner. It's the micro-question strategy.
The micro-question, yes.
Let's look at the examples, because on the surface they seem almost too simple, but the psychology behind them is incredibly potent.
The curriculum presents a scenario. The native speaker says, "I'm a bit tired today." The untrained learner might try to formulate the complex, sympathetic response.
I am so sorry to hear that you are fatigued.
Exactly, which sounds so stiff. But the reflex training teaches the learner to immediately react with a two-word question, long day, or rough morning.
2 words, long day.
It is incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
Analyze the power of that micro question. First, it proves you heard them and understood the core meaning of their statement.
Right.
Second, it shows you care about their state of mind. Third, it shows you are entirely present in the moment with them. And fourth, it requires zero complex grammar or verb conjugation. It is pure, distilled empathy delivered in 2 beats.
And the most magical part is that it forces the native speaker to keep talking.
Always.
They say, yeah, such a long day. I had these 3 meetings that went over time and then the traffic. And suddenly, you are participating in a highly fluent, dynamic conversation. But they are doing 90% of the talking. You are just steering the ship with these tiny, perfectly placed micro questions. You are the conductor of the orchestra, but they are playing all the instruments.
The framework also points out the vital use of what they term social glue. These are phrases used to validate the speaker before you ask the micro question.
Like what?
The example provided is someone says, "I went out last night," and the trained response is, "Oh, nice. Where did you go?"
Now, oh, nice. I feel like a strict academic teacher would tell you not to say that because it doesn't convey any literal, factual information. It's technically filler.
Right. It carries no factual data, but socially, it carries immense weight. It is not useless filler. It is the lubricant of human connection. Starting with, "Oh, nice," validates the other person's experience before you ask for more details.
It warms it up.
It makes the entire interaction sound instantly warmer, softer, and more native. Contrast it with the alternative. If someone says, "I went out last night," and you immediately fire back with, "Where did you go?" It lacks padding.
It sounds a bit abrupt.
Almost like an interrogation or a police interview. "Oh, nice. Where did you go?" Sounds like a friend leaning in over a cup of coffee.
That distinction between an interrogation and a warm conversation is so important, and it leads to what I'm going to call the inverse law of curiosity, which might be my favorite observation from this entire deep dive.
It's a great concept.
The curriculum suggests that the shorter the follow-up question, the more genuinely curious and native it sounds.
Let's unpack that because it is a fascinating psychological quirk of the English language.
Yeah.
The scenario is someone says, "I'm working on something." The suggested micro-question response is simply, "Anything interesting?"
Instead of saying, "Could you please tell me the details of the project you are currently engaged in?"
Exactly. The long, grammatically complete version sounds formal, detached, and academic. It sounds like you were reading from a script.
It's too formal.
Anything interesting sounds leaning in, casual, and genuinely engaged. The brevity itself implies a level of intimacy. It implies that you don't need the stiff formalities of full sentence structure because you are already on the same wavelength. You are close enough to speak in shorthand.
It is just so empowering for anyone who has ever felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of words in a new language. If you are listening to this right now and you've been stressing over memorizing thousands of advanced adjectives and complex conditional tenses, just realize this. You don't need a massive vocabulary to be perceived as a wonderful conversationalist.
You really don't.
You simply need to master these short, empathetic questions. Let the other person do the heavy lifting. Human beings love to talk about themselves. It is a universal truth.
It absolutely is.
If you become the person who facilitates that, who uses natural, native-sounding micro-questions to give them the floor, you will be considered incredibly fluent, engaging, and charming, even if you are only speaking 10% of the time.
That is the ultimate goal of the conversation reflex training. It is a paradigm shift from focusing on linguistic accuracy and volume to focusing on efficiency, presence, and human connection. It's about working with human nature, not against it.
So let's pull all of this together. What does this all mean for you, the listener, the next time you step up to that barista or walk into that networking event? Let's recap the blueprint we've uncovered today. We've gone on quite a journey, from the neurology of the brain to the sociology of small talk.
The foundational takeaway is that true conversational fluency is not a vocabulary test. It is not an academic exam where you are graded on perfect grammar by an invisible judge. Fluency is a reflex.
A reflex.
It is the trained ability to bypass your perfectionist prefrontal cortex and rely on your fast-acting habits center.
It's about having the courage to embrace imperfect starts, using that half-second the little bit to jump into the sentence and claim the conversational space before you are entirely ready, trusting that the momentum will carry you through.
It is about utilizing short, realistic, socially calibrated phrases, those conversational shock absorbers, to manage the interaction. Downplaying with keeping busy, showing vulnerability with a little tired, and bypassing complex grammar with idioms like I was just about to.
It's about mechanically looping the chat, remembering that a conversation is a game of catch, keeping your answers to a single sentence and immediately throwing the ball back with a "you too" or "how about you," so you never leave the other person stranded in a dead-end silence.
And finally, it is about deploying those micro-questions, long day, anything interesting, to show genuine presence, validate the speaker with social glue, and effectively shift the burden of the conversation so that you can navigate the interaction with grace and empathy rather than brute linguistic force.
Now, as a quick contextual note, everything we unpacked today, all this profound behavioral and linguistic analysis, was just part one of the source materials curriculum.
There's a lot more.
Yeah, they mentioned a part two that expands these reflexes into workplace English, navigating high-stakes daily life and building full confidence, which to me proves that this isn't just a quick hack or a cheap parlor trick. There is a structured, logical, lifelong path to mastering the kinetic reality of a language.
It truly is a profound shift in perspective. When you adopt this framework, you are no longer studying a dead subject trapped in a textbook. You are actively training a live, biological reflex. You are rewiring how you connect with the world.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today, something to mull over as you go about your week. Consider how this conversation reflects this reliance on short loops, immediate imperfect reactions, and simple micro-questions isn't just a strategy for learning a second language.
Oh, it goes way beyond that.
Think about what it reveals about human connection in general. Doesn't it suggest that we as human beings fundamentally value the rhythm, the shared presence, and the immediate emotional reaction of a partner far more than we value perfect textbook-accurate data?
It absolutely does. When we strip away the ego, we realize we connect through the rhythm of the interaction, not the grammar of the sentence.
Exactly. We aren't looking for a dictionary. We just want to know that you are there in the moment with us, catching the ball and throwing it back. So keep reacting. Keep embracing the imperfection. And keep throwing the ball back. We'll be right here for the next deep dive. Picture a scenario for a second, and I want you to be totally honest, because literally every single person listening has been here at some point.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You're at a gathering, right? Like maybe it's a dinner party with friends of friends or a professional networking event.
The worst.
Right. And you are in the middle of a conversation, and it is going brilliantly.
You're in the zone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're hitting all the right beats. The banter is effortless. You're making great eye contact. You just feel incredibly sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And then the person you're talking to leans in, looks right at you, and asks a deeper, open-ended question like, So what's your actual take on that whole situation?
Oh, no.
Or why do you prefer approaching it that way?
And in a fraction of a second, the entire system crashes.
Completely. You can almost hear the old dial-up modem tones in your head.
Yeah.
You know you have thoughts on this topic. You know you possess the vocabulary, but suddenly it's like your mouth is entirely disconnected from your brain.
It's a total severing of the connection.
You know, you freeze, you stall, and you either blurt out this weirdly abrupt one-word answer, or, and I think this is even worse, you start rambling.
Oh, the ramble is painful.
Spiraling into this disorganized mess of half thoughts until you finally just like wave the white flag and say, so yeah, anyway.
It's the universal sound of a conversational collapse. Anyway. And what's really fascinating is how we judge ourselves in that exact moment.
Oh, we are so hard on ourselves.
We immediately turn inward, right?
Yeah.
We think, I'm just not articulate, or I don't have a fast enough brain for this. But if we look at the cognitive science behind it, that is completely false.
Which is exactly why you're in the right place today. Today's mission is a full deep dive into decoding the hidden mechanics of fluid, articulate communication.
Yes.
We're looking at a really brilliant curriculum today from a program called Advanced Zone. Specifically, a module titled Mastering the Conversation Reflex Structure, Part 2.
Such a good text.
It is. We're going to bypass all that self-blame and look at the actual architecture of how we speak.
Because that curriculum, it diagnoses the blank mind problem in a completely different way.
Right.
It identifies the freezing not as a lack of vocabulary, and certainly not a lack of intelligence.
Thank goodness.
Right. But it defines it as the total absence of a mental framework under pressure. So you aren't lacking the bricks to build the house. You are just lacking the blueprint.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if I don't have a blueprint, what is actually happening in my brain when I freeze at that dinner party?
Okay.
Like, why does a simple question feel like an existential threat?
Well, to understand that, we really have to look at the evolutionary biology of the freeze response.
Okay.
We often hear about fight or flight, right? But freeze is actually the primary default.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When that person at the dinner party asks you an open-ended question and all eyes turn to you, your brain experiences a massive spike in cognitive load.
It's suddenly doing too much at once.
Exactly. You suddenly have to figure out what you want to say, how to sequence it, what specific words to use.
Right.
And simultaneously, your brain is monitoring the facial expressions of everyone around you to ensure you aren't violating social norms.
Oh, wow. So it's just way too much processing power required all at once.
It completely maxes out your working memory, like RAM on a computer. And when working memory is overloaded, the amygdala...
The fifth center, right.
Exactly. The part of the brain responsible for processing fear and threat, it hijacks the system. Because from an evolutionary standpoint, early humans lived in tight-knit tribes where social rejection literally meant exile.
And death.
And death. So your amygdala interprets the possibility of sounding foolish at a dinner party, not just as an awkward moment, but as a literal survival threat.
That is wild.
It shuts down the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical language-producing part of your brain, just to protect you. You freeze like a deer in headlights because your biology is trying to keep you from doing something that will get you kicked out of the tribe.
Okay, that is incredibly validating for anyone listening. It's not that I'm not smart enough. It's that my amygdala thinks a question about my favorite movie is literally a predator in the bushes.
Precisely. And this is the major paradigm shift that the Advanced Zone material offers. It treats confident conversation not as an innate talent, but as a reflex.
A reflex that can be trained.
Exactly. Trained through structural scaffolding. If you give the brain a predictable structure to rely on, the cognitive load drops drastically.
Ah, so the amygdala doesn't freak out.
Right. The amygdala doesn't perceive a threat, the prefrontal cortex stays online, and the words can just flow.
So we've established that the brain needs a blueprint to avoid maxing out its RAM. And that brings us to the first massive tool this curriculum introduces.
The PREP method.
Yes. When you are faced with an open-ended question that usually triggers that freeze response, the program offers this structural life raft. It's called the PREP method. PREP.
It stands for point, reason, example, point. And while it sounds incredibly simple on the surface, the cognitive efficiency of this framework is profound.
It gives the brain a defined beginning, a logical middle, and a definitive end.
Exactly.
Let's break those 4 stages down, and then I want to really stress test how they sound in reality. Because I know people are thinking, how does this actually work?
Sure. So the first P is point. The instruction here is to state your main point clearly and immediately.
No rambling.
No preamble, no hedging, no, well, I kind of think maybe you just deliver the thesis statement of your answer.
Okay, then we move to the R, which is reason. You give the core, overarching logic for why you hold that point.
Correct. Followed immediately by the E, for example.
Which is the fun part.
Yeah, this is where you provide specific evidence or a concrete anecdote or a data point that illustrates the reason you just gave.
Got it.
And finally, the last P is point again. You restate your main point, perhaps slightly rephrased, to conclude the thought and definitively signal to the listener that you are finished speaking.
Which is so important, letting people know you're done.
No, totally.
So the curriculum provides several specific examples to demonstrate this, and analyzing them reveals exactly why this structure neutralizes the freeze response.
Let's look at them.
Let's start with a low-stakes, everyday question. Someone asks you, do you like living in the city?
A classic small talk trap.
Right. Now the panic brain just blurts out, yes, I like it a lot, and then you just stare at each other.
Crickets.
Or you ramble about traffic for 10 minutes. But with PREP, it becomes a structured, satisfying thought. Let's look at the prescribed PREP response from the source material.
Okay, so the point, yes, I really enjoy it. The reason. The main reason is the convenience.
Nice and clear.
The example. For example, I can walk to work, and there are dozens of great restaurants just minutes from my apartment. And the final point. So overall, living in the city is perfect for me right now.
That is an incredibly lean, satisfying answer. And look at the psychological relief it provides to both the speaker and the listener.
It really is a relief.
Because as the speaker, you aren't wandering through a maze of your own thoughts. But as a listener, think about it. Have you ever been trapped listening to someone who is clearly figuring out their point while they're talking?
Oh, it's exhausting. Because human attention thrives on narrative arcs. When you use PREP, you are fulfilling an unconscious contract with the listener.
A contract, I like that.
You tell them what you are going to say, you explain the logic, you paint a picture with an example, and you tie it off. It just signals extreme competence.
Let's look at another one the curriculum uses, because it highlights a really specific transition that I think is super clever.
Okay.
The prompt is, do you prefer working from home or in the office?
Right. A very common question these days. The PREP answer from the text goes like this. Point. I definitely prefer working from home.
Okay.
Reason. It's mainly because I can focus better without the distractions of an office. Example. For instance, last week I finished a major report in 2 days, which would have taken me a week at the office. Final point. So for me, working from home is much more productive.
The absolute genius of that specific response is the jump from the reason to the example.
How so?
Well, the reason is abstract, right? Focus better without distractions. That is a conceptual idea.
Yeah.
But the example, finished a major report in 2 days instead of a week, that is grounded in hard, undeniable reality.
This touches on exactly how human beings process persuasion and information.
Okay, tell me more about that.
When you only provide reasons, you are speaking to the listener's logical processing center. You are essentially asking them to evaluate your logic, which actually invites debate.
Oh, because I could be like, well, my office isn't distracting.
Exactly. But when you drop in a specific example, you light up their visual and narrative processing. You move from the abstract to the concrete.
It basically proves the point without you having to argue it.
Yes.
Like, I can debate whether offices are distracting, but I cannot debate that you finished your report in 2 days. The example anchors the entire argument.
And this works even as the questions get way more abstract or complex. The curriculum applies this to a leadership question. The prompt is, what's the most important quality in a leader?
Okay, let's hear the PREP for that.
The point. I believe the most important quality is empathy. The reason. Because an empathetic leader can understand their team's needs and motivations.
Good reason.
The example. For example, my last manager took the time to understand our personal challenges, which made us all more loyal and hardworking. And the final point. That's why I think empathy is the key to great leadership.
I really love how the example there isn't some hypothetical business case study.
Right, it's not from a textbook.
It's deeply personal. My last manager. It turns a theoretical question about leadership philosophy into a lived experience. It's so much more compelling.
It connects. Now, to show how this handles highly nuanced, widely debated topics, the curriculum uses the debate over social media as a test case.
Oh, that's a minefield.
It is. The prompt is simply, is social media good or bad for society? Now, whether you listening agree with this particular stance or not, just watch how the PREP structure organizes a really complex gray area argument without letting it spiral into a rant.
Let's hear it.
The point. I think it's a double-edged sword, but I lean towards it being more harmful.
Nice nuance.
The reason? This is because it often promotes unrealistic comparisons. The example. You see everyone's highlight reels, vacations, promotions, and it can make you feel inadequate about your own life.
So relatable.
And the final point. So while it has benefits, I think the negative impact on mental health is a serious problem.
See, it handles the complexity beautifully. Double-edged sword, but I lean towards. That opening point acknowledges the gray area immediately.
Yes.
But because of the rigid structure that follows, the speaker doesn't get lost in listing 20 different pros and cons. They just give one reason, one example, and get out.
Exactly.
Okay, I have to jump in here, though. Let me push back on this entirely.
Please do.
Because I hear this, and I see the structural elegance on paper. I really do. But if I use PREP for every single answer at that dinner party, aren't my friends going to realize I'm running a conversational algorithm on them?
They might.
It feels rigid. Like, is this painting by numbers? If my brain is just constantly going point, reason, example, point, I'm going to sound like a chatbot. Doesn't applying a formula like this kill the spontaneity and warmth of a real human chat?
I mean, if you use it rigidly and mechanically forever, yes, absolutely, you would sound completely unnatural. But you are falling into the trap of confusing the training wheels with the bicycle.
The training wheels. Explain that.
Let's bring back the concept of cognitive load and working memory.
Okay.
Think of your brain's processing power like the RAM in a computer. When you are asked a complex question, if 90% of your RAM is consumed by calculating how to build your sentences so you don't sound foolish.
Which is what usually happens.
Exactly. Then you only have 10% of your RAM left to monitor your tone of voice, read the room, exhibit warm body language, or inject humor.
Right, because I'm internally panicking about my sentence structure. I'm just trying to survive the sentence.
Exactly. What the advanced zone material is doing is teaching you to offload the structural organization to a background process.
Oh, I see.
Think about a jazz musician practicing scales.
Okay.
Playing a C major scale up and down in a practice room isn't making music. It's repetitive, it's mathematical, it's robotic.
It's a Jarrell.
But the musician drills that scale relentlessly so that when they are on stage improvising, their fingers inherently know where the right keys are without conscious thought.
Sure, but a conversation isn't a jazz solo. Even with lower cognitive load, humans are highly attuned to cadence. If every single thought I express follows a rigid 4-part essay structure, people are going to notice the pattern.
They would if you spoke in perfect paragraphs all the time. But the goal here is internal neurological training, not external robotic delivery. As you practice this reflex, the rigid boundaries blur. You might blend the reason and the example into one breath. You might imply the final point rather than stating it explicitly.
So you kind of loosen up once you know the rules.
Exactly. The structure isn't meant to be a cage, it's scaffolding. By relying on the PREP blueprint to handle the heavy lifting of organization, you actually free up that 90% of your RAM.
That makes so much sense.
You can now use that mental energy to be spontaneous, to smile, to use varied intonation. It actually creates more space for your personality to shine through, not less.
Okay, I see the mechanism there. I'm offloading the organizational math so my personality can actually run smoothly.
Precisely.
We've established that PREP builds a phenomenal individual response. But let's look at the reality of human interaction. A conversation isn't a monologue.
No, it's not.
If I just drop a perfectly crafted PREP paragraph at that dinner party and then completely stop talking, I haven't engaged in a conversation. I've just delivered a press release.
A very articulate press release, but yes, it halts the interaction entirely.
Right. And this brings us to a critical pivot in the curriculum. Having a structured answer is great for an interview, but how does this survive the wild, unpredictable flow of a casual Friday night conversation?
You need a way to pass the ball back.
Yes. And to explore this, the material introduces a simulated conversational partner named Alex to test these reflexes in real-time flow.
The shift here is moving from structural delivery to conversational momentum. It's about how to maintain the rally.
The curriculum starts with the most universally paralyzing greeting known to humanity. You run into Alex, and Alex says, "Hey, it's been a while. What have you been up to?"
It is the ultimate trap.
It really is, because the standard panicked response is usually, "Not much, you." which is just a conversational dead end.
Total dead end. You've killed the momentum before it even started.
But let's look at the pivot the curriculum teaches here. The prescribed response is, hey, not too much, honestly. Just the usual work, life. How about you? Anything new and exciting?
Look at the structural mechanics of that response. First, it neutralizes the pressure of the open-ended question with a standard, polite deflection, just the usual.
Which takes the pressure off.
But it doesn't stop there. It immediately executes a pivot. It throws the ball back over the net with a hook. Anything new and exciting.
It gives Alex permission to talk about whatever they want rather than making them dig for a topic.
Exactly.
And then the simulation gets into the fun stuff. Alex takes the hook and says, same old, really. Actually, I did see that new sci-fi movie everyone's talking about.
And here's where the conversational flow reflex is truly tested. The curriculum offers this precise response. Oh, the one about the time-traveling cats. I've been meaning to see that. How was it? Don't give me any spoilers.
Okay, I have to pause on the time-traveling cats detail because that is such a specific, quirky choice by the curriculum designers, but it demonstrates something vital about active listening.
It demonstrates the validation of shared reality.
Yes. You aren't just giving a generic, oh, a movie, cool. By identifying the movie, the one about the time-traveling cats, you are signaling to Alex, I am in the same cultural ecosystem as you. I hear you, and I validate your topic.
Let's break down the layers of social cues packed into that one short response, because it is incredibly dense.
Let's do it.
First, as you noted, identification and validation. Second, personal connection. I've been meaning to see that. You align your interests with theirs.
Which builds rapport.
Third, the open-ended question to maintain momentum. How was it? And fourth, the boundary. Don't give me any spoilers.
That boundary is fascinating to me. Why include that? Like, why tell them what not to do?
Because it adds a playful, informal tone. Setting a low-stakes boundary like no spoilers creates immediate intimacy.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
It signals that you are comfortable enough with this person to make a demand, but the demand is entirely safe and culturally universally understood. It instantly relaxes the formality of the interaction.
It's brilliant. It turns a rigid exchange into a game. So Alex replies, haha, no spoilers, I promise. It was incredible, honestly. The visuals were insane. You should definitely check it out.
And the curriculum closes out this interaction with one final reflex.
Yes. You've convinced me. Maybe I'll go this weekend. We should catch up properly soon, by the way. To which Alex agrees to grab coffee next week.
We need to analyze why the curriculum maps this specific trajectory. Why does it end with getting coffee?
Because that's the ultimate goal of the interaction, right?
Yeah,
to connect.
Exactly. It maps the biological and psychological progression of a successful social encounter.
How so?
It starts with a greeting, establishing baseline safety. It finds a point of shared interest, the visual spectacle of the movie, which releases dopamine and creates a sense of tribal belonging.
Right.
And then, crucially, it escalates to a future commitment. The underlying philosophy here is that true fluency isn't about perfect grammar or vocabulary. It's about the ability to move a relationship forward. Fluency is action.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Think of a conversation like a game of tennis. When someone hits the ball over the net to you with a question, you can't just catch the ball, hold it, deliver a beautiful PREP statement to the crowd, and put the ball in your pocket.
The game dies.
The game completely dies. You have to hit the ball back, you ask a follow-up question, you react to their recommendation, you pivot to making a plan.
The PREP method is your powerful baseline ground stroke. The flow mechanics we just discussed are your volleys at the net. Both reflexes are required to play the game effectively.
But let's look at the limits of this casual banter, because we've conquered the Friday night chat about time-traveling cats. That is a relatively low-pressure environment where charm and flow carry the day.
Very low stakes.
But what happens when Monday morning rolls around? You step into a boardroom with cross-functional managers, department heads, and your boss's boss.
The stakes are completely altered.
Completely. Relying on playful boundaries about movie spoilers isn't going to save you when you are asked for a quarterly projection.
The environment demands a severe adaptation.
Yeah.
The language must become slightly more formal, but more importantly, the strategic intent behind every word shifts.
What do you mean by strategic intent?
In a casual setting, the goal is connection and shared dopamine. In the workplace, the goal is utility. You are evaluated on your ability to be professional, constructive, and efficient.
You have to deliver value.
Exactly. You need to project the image of someone who contributes tangible value rather than someone who merely agrees to get along, or disagrees and causes friction.
The curriculum recognizes this shift and brings our buddy Alex back. But this time, Alex is a colleague running a high-stakes meeting. And they put the speaker through 4 very specific, highly recognizable workplace crucibles.
Let's go through them.
Let's start with the first one, the meeting update. Alex asks if anyone has any quick updates before they dive into the main agenda.
Now, human instinct, especially when we want to prove our worth to our superiors, is to justify our existence. We tend to ramble about how hard we worked, the obstacles we faced, and then deliver the result.
Right, the "look how busy I am" monologue. We've all done it.
Oh, absolutely. But look at the reflex the curriculum trains instead. The responses, just a quick one for me. The client feedback on the latest draft was very positive. I've shared the details in the chat.
That is incredibly lean. And notice what is missing from that update.
The fluff.
There is no subservience. There is no apology. Usually when people interrupt a meeting to give an update, they use softening language, right? Sorry to take up time, but I just wanted to quickly mention.
It sounds so defensive.
It does. This response strips out all the defensive padding. It signals you're claiming the floor with just a quick one. It delivers the unvarnished data. Feedback was positive. And it provides the resource for those who want to dig deeper without holding the entire room hostage.
Details in the chat. It respects the single most valuable commodity in a boardroom time. It builds a reputation of supreme reliability.
The second scenario they run through is infinitely more dangerous. It's about giving an opinion.
Oh, the slogan one.
Yes. Alex says to the room, "I'm not sure about this new marketing slogan. Feels a bit bland. What are your thoughts?"
This is a conversational minefield. If you completely agree with Alex, you add no value. You are just an echo. If you aggressively disagree, you create defensiveness and political friction.
The reflex they teach here is brilliant. It's basically verbal Aikido. The prescribed response is, "I see your point. It is a bit safe. What if we tried something that focuses more on the eco-friendly angle? I think that could be more impactful."
Let's break down the psychology of why you call that verbal Aikido. It relies on a concept known as psychological safety.
Oh, tell me about that.
In a professional environment, people's egos are deeply tied to their ideas. When Alex expresses a concern, they are making themselves slightly vulnerable. The very first thing this response does is provide psychological safety. I see your point. It is a bit safe.
You are validating their reality. You are telling their amygdala, "I am not attacking you."
Precisely. You bypass their ego defense mechanism completely. But, and this is the crucial pivot, you don't stop at validation. Validation without contribution is just flattery.
That's a great way to put it.
Once the defense mechanisms are lowered, you immediately build a new bridge. What if we tried something that focuses more on the eco-friendly angle?
It transforms a dead-end complaint into a collaborative brainstorm. You take the momentum of their critique and seamlessly redirect it into your own creative idea.
But what if we adulate this? What if Alex, or the boss, rejects the eco-friendly pivot? What if they say, no, eco-friendly is overused?
Oh, that's where the PREP method kicks back in, right? You don't get defensive. You fall back on structure. You say, "I understand that concern." That's your point. The reason I suggest it is our core demographic data. Reason. For example, our last eco campaign saw a 20% bump in engagement. Example. So while it's common, it is demonstrably effective for us. Final point.
Exactly. You layer the reflexes, the validation pivot prevents the fight, and the PREP structure provides the armor for your idea.
This leads perfectly into the third workplace scenario, which requires the absolute ultimate suspension of ego. Receiving feedback. This one is so tough. It is. Alex comes to you and says, "The report is solid, but I think the introduction could be a bit stronger. It needs to grab the reader's attention right away."
Receiving critique triggers the exact same biological panic as the dinner party question. We feel attacked. Our instinct is to explain why we wrote it that way, to justify our choices, or to subtly shift the blame.
We want to defend our territory. It's natural. But the reflex trained here requires complete ego death. The response is, "That's helpful feedback, thank you. I'll work on a more compelling opening and send over a revised version by the end of the day."
It is entirely action-oriented. By saying, "That's helpful feedback," you are reframing the critique from an attack to a gift.
Right.
You are consciously deciding not to engage in a debate about the past, why the intro was written the way it was, and instead focusing 100% of your linguistic energy on the future. You tell them exactly what action you will take and the specific timeline they can expect it.
It makes you bulletproof. You literally cannot argue with someone who graciously accepts the note and promises a fix by 5 p.m.
You really can't.
Finally, the fourth scenario in the boardroom is the wrap-up. Alex concludes the meeting, and the trained reflex is to not just silently log off or walk out. You provide a verbal punctuation mark. Agreed. Thanks, everyone. Have a productive rest of your day.
It feels minor, almost trivial, but vocalizing that wrap-up is a display of active presence. It leaves a lingering auditory impression of leadership and composure in the room, right as everyone is forming their final memories of the interaction.
I've been trying to visualize the cognitive shift required to move from the casual, time-traveling cat's conversation to this highly intentional boardroom communication.
How do you see it?
Think of it like driving a car with a manual transmission.
Okay.
When you are chatting casually with friends, you can kind of put the car in neutral and coast down the hill. The natural gravity and momentum of the banter carry you along.
Yeah.
But when you step into the workplace, you have to actively engage the clutch. You have to be highly intentional about every single gear shift. You have to know exactly when to shift into first gear to validate a colleague, when to seamlessly upshift into an efficient surgical update, and when to confidently accelerate to insert your own eco-friendly concept into the mix. You cannot coast in the boardroom. You have to drive the machine.
That analogy perfectly captures the intentionality required, and the curriculum makes a bold claim about the result of driving intentionally like that. It states that mastering these specific workplace reflexes makes you an indispensable part of the team.
Indispensable, that's a strong word.
It is, but it's vital to recognize what they are not saying. They are not saying you need an MBA-level vocabulary. They are not saying you need to be the most extroverted person in the office.
Right.
Indispensability is built on the reliability of your structural communication. Leaders want to work with people who don't waste their time during updates, who don't shatter the team's psychological safety during disagreements, and who don't let their ego derail feedback.
Which brings us to a fascinating turning point in this deep dive. Because we have spent all this time dissecting the external mechanics. We've mapped the PREP architecture. We've analyzed the rhythmic flow of conversational tennis. We've navigated the political minefields of the boardroom.
Yes, all the structural stuff.
But the advanced zone curriculum doesn't end with mechanics. Here's where it gets really interesting. The final portion abandons the external scripts entirely and turns the lens inward. It focuses purely on the internal psychology of the speaker.
It acknowledges a fundamental truth. You can have the best structural blueprint in the world, but if the internal narrative of the architect is driven by fear, the building will never get built.
The curriculum treats confidence in a way I have rarely seen. We are socially conditioned to view confidence as a genetic lottery, right?
Oh, completely.
You are either born with a gift of gab or you aren't. You are naturally charismatic or you are destined to be awkward. But this material frames confidence as a deliberate, conscious choice. It is a permission slip you explicitly write for yourself to take up space in the room.
The mechanism they use to instill this is a series of spoken declarations. This is deeply rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy principles.
Declarations out loud.
Yes. The idea is that our internal monologue dictates our external behavior. If your internal narrative is, I'm going to mess this up, your amygdala stays on high alert and you freeze. By forcing the speaker to declare a new reality out loud, you begin to literally rewire the neural pathways associated with communication.
Let's examine these specific mindset shifts, because the dichotomies they present are philosophically profound. The very first declaration targets identity. It says, I am not a language learner. I am a language user.
If we really sit with that sentence, it demands a massive psychological repositioning.
In what way?
Well, what is a learner? A learner is someone in a perpetual state of preparation. A learner is practicing for the real event, which means they are allowed to stay on the sidelines. They have an excuse for not participating fully because they aren't ready yet.
They're sitting on the bench watching the game.
Exactly. But a user is in the arena. A user is actively living in the real world, manipulating the tools they currently possess to achieve a result. By declaring, I am a language user, you are violently stripping away the excuse of preparation. You are telling your brain that the rehearsal is over. Your current tools, however imperfect, are sufficient to do the job right now.
It forces you onto the field. That is powerful. The next declaration builds on that by focusing on a process. I am not translating, I am communicating.
This attacks the cognitive bottleneck we discussed at the very beginning. Translating is a mechanical, computational process. It is the search for exact one-to-one equivalencies between an abstract thought and a specific word. It is rigid.
Right.
Communicating, on the other hand, is a deeply human, flexible process. The goal of communication is simply the transfer of an idea, an emotion, or an intent from your mind into the mind of another person.
So if I am focused on translating, and I forget the word stubborn, my brain crashes, the modem sound plays. But if I am focused on communicating and I forget the word stubborn, I just say, when someone refuses to change their mind, the exact word doesn't matter. The transfer of the idea is what matters.
Exactly. When you abandon the computational rigidity of translation, you realize you have immense flexibility. You can use analogies, you can use physical gestures, you can draw a diagram on a napkin. The medium is irrelevant. The connection is the goal.
And that leads directly into the declaration that I think will resonate most with anyone who has ever frozen mid-sentence. It tackles perfectionism. I am not searching for the perfect word. I am sharing my ideas.
The tyranny of the perfect vocabulary.
It is a tyranny. How many times have we all paused mid-sentence, snapping our fingers in the air, agonizing over finding that one perfect, eloquent, hyper-specific adjective? Well, the person we are talking to slowly loses the thread of the conversation.
We've all done it.
We sacrifice the momentum of the connection on the altar of sounding smart. This declaration explicitly frees you from that trap. It says your ideas have value regardless of the packaging.
Which brings us to the emotional bedrock of the entire curriculum, the declaration about fear. I am not afraid of making mistakes. I am focused on making connections.
This hits the core of the amygdala hijack, doesn't it?
It addresses the absolute root cause of the freeze. Why are we afraid of making a mistake in conversation? Because a mistake, a stutter, using the wrong word, losing our train of thought, it feels like a social failure.
It feels like exposure.
It feels like we're exposing ourselves as inadequate. But by explicitly stating that connection is the higher priority, you change the criteria for success. If the goal is a flawless performance, a mistake is a disaster. If the goal is human connection, a mistake is just a bump in the road. In fact, sometimes vulnerability and minor mistakes actually accelerate connection because they signal authenticity.
You are actively telling your nervous system to stand down. The curriculum then moves from these identity-based declarations into a final active commitment. And when I first read this part of the material, I genuinely felt a physical shift in my posture. It is a battle cry for anyone who has felt trapped in their own silence.
It's a great passage.
It reads, "Today I will speak before I feel ready. Today I will ask questions without hesitation. Today I will give my opinion clearly and without apology."
It is the ultimate rejection of the learner mindset.
And the line that absolutely gave me chills, the thesis statement of this entire psychological shift. Today, I will not let the fear of a small mistake stop me from having a big conversation.
It's a phenomenal concluding thought, and it ties the entire methodology together. If we pull the lens all the way back to the beginning of our deep dive, that moment of sheer panic at the networking event when your mind goes utterly blank, we can finally see the complete picture of what went wrong and how to fix it.
It all connects.
People don't freeze merely because they don't know the PREP structure. Although lacking that scaffolding guarantees a cognitive overload, they freeze because they are suffocating under the pressure of perfectionism. The desperate biological pursuit of the perfect word to avoid social rejection completely blocks the brain's ability to be fluent.
The pressure to be flawless is the exact thing that causes the flaw.
Precisely. By shifting the internal goal from perfection to connection, you lower the cognitive stakes. The amygdala relaxes. The prefrontal cortex stays online. And because the fear is mitigated, the structural scaffolding, the PREP method, the conversational flow pivots, the boardroom aikido can actually do its job. The conversational reflex can finally take over seamlessly.
So synthesizing this entire journey for you listening to us right now, if you have ever felt like a hostage in your own head during a conversation, you are now walking away armed with a complete, biologically sound, field-tested toolkit.
A very robust toolkit.
You possess the PREP method point, reason, example. Point 2, instantly organize your thoughts and unfreeze your working memory. You understand the rhythmic back-and-forth flow required to navigate casual banter, validate your partner, and drive the interaction toward a future connection.
It's a tennis match.
Exactly. You have the strategic ego-bypassing reflexes required to survive and thrive in the high-stakes boardroom. And underpinning all of it, you have the bulletproof psychological framework of a communicator who consciously prioritizes human connection over sterile perfection.
But we would be remiss if we did not echo the curriculum's final crucial warning. This material is not a magic spell.
No, it's not.
It is not a software update that you download once and never think about again. As the program explicitly states, this is a workout. Just as physical muscles will atrophy if you stop lifting weights, these neurological conversational reflexes will degrade if they aren't actively engaged.
You have to keep practicing.
The instruction is to return to these structural exercises, to mentally drill the PREP method, and to vocalize those psychological declarations every single time that old familiar hesitation begins to creep back into your throat.
It is a lifelong practice,
Yeah.
but the material also insists on recognizing the work you put in. It prompts its users, once they have fully engaged with this mental workout, to acknowledge their effort and explicitly declare, "Conversation reflex complete."
I love that.
And honestly, if you have stayed with us through this exhaustive, hour-long deep dive, dissecting the intricate biology, psychology, and architecture of human communication, you have put in the work today. You deserve to claim that victory.
It requires immense intentionality to rewire how we fundamentally interact with the world around us.
It really does. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final lingering idea to mull over as you step away from this and head into your next interaction, whether it's with a barista, a best friend, or your boss. We spend so much of our lives accumulating facts. We obsess over having the exact right answers, reading the smartest books, and building an impenetrable, perfect vocabulary. We view our minds as vaults of information. But what if the truest measure of your intellect isn't the sheer volume of data stored inside your head? What if true intellect is measured by the structural grace with which you open the door and invite others in to see it? What if your next conversation isn't a high-stakes test of your knowledge at all, but simply a shared space that you are actively, generously choosing to build with someone else?
A profound reframing of why we speak in the first place.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will echo the parting sentiment of the Advanced Zone material today. Stay fluent and stay confident.